Thank you for joining us on Sunday Interview. I'm your host, Gravazio Zulu. Now, disaster management and mitigation is a key part of national planning. Although Zambia does not rank among nations highly prone to disasters, it has had a fair share of emergencies needing adequate and urgent attention, such as cholera, floods, and accidents. How well equipped is the Disaster Management and Mitigation Unit in Zambia? On Sunday Interview today, we speak to Minister in the Office of the Vice President, Sylvia Chalikosa. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, and good evening, viewers.
Office of the Vice President, quite busy but rarely heard. Maybe I'll begin from that point. What do you do?
The Office of the Vice President has 4 departments. To start with, we have the Administration Department, which looks at the staff issues for the staff that work at the Office of the Vice President. And then we also have the Bureau, which is the Office of the Vice President, Her Honor the Vice President herself. So all administrative issues are dealt with by the Administration Department, which is headed by the Permanent Secretary, Mr. Mwansa. And secondly, we have the Department of Parliamentary Affairs. As you all know, the Vice President is the leader of government business in Parliament, and she represents the government side of things. When we receive questions, it's our office that is responsible for finding the answers to those questions and informing the public on where we are. And thirdly, we have the Disaster and Management and Mitigation Unit, which is in DMMU in short. And this is the department that coordinates responses to any eventuality of hazardous nature. And then fourthly, there's an element of honors and awards, which is coordinated from the Office of the Vice President in terms of identifying who should be honored and reasons for being honored, and generally recommendations come from the general public. So basically we have those areas in which the Office of the Vice President operates from.
So it's quite a big office.
It is.
Supervising 2 or 3 permanent secretaries?
Yes, in fact, the parliamentary business also is, the oversight is under the permanent secretary, Ms. Juliana Shoko Chilombo, and DMMU is under the national coordinator, recently appointed Mr. Chanda Kavwe. And then honors and awards falls under administration.
I know that you also deal with, I'll ask that later, you also deal with resettlement?
Yes, that's also under administration. I forgot about that. Yes, resettlement is also under administration. It's just the way that we have organized the departments for administrative convenience. So administration, apart from looking at staff issues, honors and awards, there is also resettlement.
You are well known for disaster management and mitigation. I know you've spoken about a lot of things, but let me start. I want to start with that firstly. I want to ask, what does disaster mean by your standards as government? I know we define it differently. What qualifies to be called a disaster? What do you define as disaster?
Well, disaster is basically an incident that occurs as a result of a natural or man-made hazard, and it's beyond anybody's control, and naturally we have to respond to that disaster. So it could be an issue of drought where there's failure of crop, to put it as an example, and we have to respond in terms of ensuring that we have food security. It could be another failure of crop caused by flooding because of excessive rains. As you know that in Zambia we are predominantly seasonal based in terms of our agriculture activities, but we do have some commercial activities taking place where there's irrigation and agribusiness taking place throughout the year. But in terms of disasters, it's when something happens naturally, like fires, if you like, which destroys buildings, and flooding, which destroys crops, animals eating people's crops as well. That's also a disaster, depending on the scale as well. It may be a disaster at household level, but that does not translate into a disaster at national level.
So individuals don't really qualify?
No, they don't, because the other qualification is the ability for the community to respond. If it goes beyond their capabilities of responding, then it becomes a national intervention activity.
When you scan the media, of course, sometimes you're also blamed for failing to deal with floods that are probably in the central business district. That doesn't qualify to be a disaster, does it? At what point does it qualify to be?
Well, what happens is that when an incident happens, for instance, we'll look at flooding in particular, the community reports it to the district commissioner. And the district commissioner is charged with the responsibility of calling the DDMC, which is a district disaster management committee meeting, to assess how widely spread that incidence is. If the district is able to deal with it, then it doesn't come up to the head office. But if the district is not able to deal with it, for instance, if there are many lives involved, there's loss of lives, loss of property, which definitely needs a larger intervention, then they prepare a report. And that report lists all the things that are supposed to be done, the things that are required. And that report is then passed on to the provincial administration, where they also sit and go through the report. And then the final report is then passed on to headquarters. At headquarters, that's where you get the national coordinator now, who coordinates the relevant stakeholders to deal with that calamity or that hazard. For instance, if it's a road traffic accident, and maybe 7, 10, 15, or a number of people have died, and government needs to intervene, it's at the national coordinator level that we will organize for coffins and try to assist the community or the people that have suffered the loss to help them restore their lives. So equally, if we have an attack of, say, pests on crops, the government will come in because it's large scale. If it's an individual farmer, we don't really come in because it's an individual who is supposed to take into account pests that may, attack the crop, and they're supposed to prepare for the pesticides and all. But if it affects a wide area, for instance, maybe 50 farmers or 100 farmers or 500 farmers are involved, then definitely government comes in.
In terms of accidents, how far do you go in terms of managing and mitigating? Does it end at barrier? Do you go further to assist those that survive the accidents?
Well, we will have a stakeholders meeting. We will usually call the families and look at the aspects of the accident, who caused the accident, what compensation is that person or company going to give to the family members, and we try to mitigate in terms of just harmonizing the situation. It's not really government that takes it upon itself to compensate, because government is not entirely responsible for the cause of the accident.
Now let's look at the issue of early warning system. I think this is one of the major issues, the thorny issue among so many people. I know that, for instance, the country was hit by armyworms in 2017. The response from government, quite good, but rather late. That was a concern.
Yes.
Do we have an adequate early warning system?
We do, and if you listen to the weather forecast, that's the first point of call. The meteorological department usually gives us warning, and working closely with them and the Ministry of Agriculture, we get the information that we are likely to have this area affected by such and such an activity. And what we would like people to do, especially the farmers, is to pay attention to whatever warning they are given. The 2017-18 season, we had the warning, but the response from the agricultural sector was very slow. And as a result, it escalated to what it was. And by the time we were intervening, there was widespread armyworm attack. But this year, for 2018-2019, we've reacted a little sooner, and I don't think we will have such a widespread destruction of the crop. And basically what we would like is that people should not see government as tending to their everyday needs. Government is the last resort when people are not able to manage on their own, and collectively they make a big block. That's when government can come in. But at individual level, we encourage people to take care of their own property, even through insurance. Insurance is a way in which that people can recover some of their losses If they don't take out insurance on their crops, they don't take out insurance on their property, they'll end up losing everything. Whereas if they do take out insurance, they'll have some kind of relief from the claims that they may put forward.
Let's look at this early warning system and bridges get washed away, schools collapse, roofs are blown off sometimes. Don't we see these things? You're able to tell that this bridge eventually will go.
Again, DMMU comes in as a unit that coordinates other sectors or the key stakers relevant to the situation. So in terms of bridges, we have RDA, we have the Ministry of Local Government, we also have the provincial and district administration. So all these sectors have to work together to avert getting to the level where a bridge is washed away. So regular maintenance is
That's a common feature now that you see every rainy season. You have to get a report that the bridge has been washed away. And some of them, it's not even that much rain that washes them away.
The reason is that there's lack of supervision.
Meaning we are more reactive.
We are, but what we're trying to do is that we need to strengthen the monitoring aspect where we are.
Is that part of your early warning system?
Yes, well, the early warning system, yes, it's supposed to handle, from the DMME perspective, let me put it this way. The early warning systems that we have put, for instance, in Western Province, in Mwandi and Sioma, which are flood-prone areas because they're in the plains, is a siren to warn people when there's heavy rains and the water is, the level of the water is rising. The siren will go off to warn people that the chances of flooding taking place is very high, and you probably have 2 hours to evacuate, 3 hours. You know, it has that advanced technology to help the people prepare for evacuation. Other warning systems, like I said, is just listening to the weather report. Other warning systems could be observation of traffic rules. You are told not to speed over so many kilometers per hour. You ignore that, the chances are you might have an accident. So there are various intervention measures that have been put in place, and it's up to us to follow them.
The way you explain the early warning, it speaks more to the public than to government. Do you get a system where you know that, well, this road is being eaten, or this road has got potholes, and anytime soon there's going to be an accident here, and nobody mends it, and then we have an accident, and then you move in to help the bereaved families?
It's most unfortunate, but really an accident is just that. It's not planned for. You don't want it to happen. It happens because it is an accident. And that's why we're saying that going forward we need to strengthen the monitoring aspect. We do receive the reports, and oftentimes when there's no reaction in terms of fixing the potholes, it's a funding issue. So we have to look at other ways of raising funds other than depending on the treasury. You may have, I mean, it's a widespread knowledge now that we have all these toll gates which are raising money specifically to be used on the roads and bridges, as well as whatever has to do with logistics in terms of transportation of goods, people and animals. So we are trying to address that situation. We know that when we leave something unattended to, it gets worse until it becomes unmanageable.
Until it becomes a disaster. We are in the rainy season now, and 3 disasters scenario are almost anticipated. 1, cholera outbreak, 2, army worms, and drought, and of course floods. These come with the season. Yes. How ready are you?
We are very ready. In fact, we've been having preparatory meetings with the Ministry of Health on the cholera issue, together with the Ministry of Local Government, trying to see that public places are kept as clean as possible. Water is provided using water points, more or less what we did during the cholera outbreak last season. So we are looking to putting up water points in terms of tanks, so that water is available to the communities most prone to be epicenters or the places where cholera starts. And we have a long-term project where we want to look at the water network in the unplanned settlements. So as the Lusaka City Council is going around the unplanned settlements together with the Ministry of Local Government, where they have the urbanization program, we're trying to upgrade these areas and make sure that they have water so that they don't go back to using shallow wells. If the water is not near enough, they tend to dig the shallow wells and start using them as well. And then the other thing is that we have a rate of vandalism. I think it's important for people to understand that when they destroy pipes, they'll make holes in the pipes so that they have nearer access to the water. It disturbs the whole community. They may, at individual level, have sorted out their problem in terms of access to water, but in the long run it affects the whole community, and then government has to start from the beginning to fix those pipes and make sure that water reaches the people. And
any reports on armyworms?
Yes, definitely. I was recently in the Copper Belt and I was checking on one of the peasant farmers in Luangano area, and the farm that I visited, I think, has recovered the crop because they benefited from the pesticide that was donated through the Africa Development Bank. We received some pesticide worth about $500,000 US, and the whole area on the Copper Belt was about 18,000 or so hectares that was affected, which required 2,500 liters, and this particular farmer was a beneficiary of the same. Again, that is only one way in which to intervene in terms of looking at how you can stop the destruction of crops, in this particular case maize. It wasn't the armyworm. People are confusing the two issues. It was the stalk borer and the fall armyworm. I mean, yeah, fall. Fall meaning the seasonal, fall season. And then there's the Africa armyworm, which has more devastating outcomes, because the Africa armyworm eats everything. It leaves nothing on the ground, and it comes in swarms. So we are not at that stage, so people should not be that alarmed.
There are no warnings indicating
the warnings,
we may have this disease.
The warnings are there.
Areas that are indicating.
Yes, the warnings are there, but you only get that warning if you are a farmer. If you are not a farmer, you will not be affected, because the Ministry of Agriculture have extension officers who visit camps, and when they visit the camps, they go armed with information, assisting the farmers on how best they can look after their crops. So from the farming community, the early warning systems are in place.
So we are safe from armyworms as the situation
as at now, the situation is not out of hand. It has been adequately contained, yes.
Still about agriculture, we've had some areas that complained about drought, prolonged drought, no rains, no rainfall. Is the situation that bad?
At the moment, we have started the food relief distribution. Where there is drought, normally we have an in-depth assessment that's done around April, and the food relief distribution program is supposed to start around August, September, when the season is dry, so that we can get to the affected areas. About 38 to 51 districts have been affected, and the food relief program has started. We have a few challenges with the actual transportation of the food to particular districts because of the status of the roads, and now that we are deep into the wet season, some places are proving to be a bit difficult to access, but nevertheless we have a way of getting the food to the people. And again, we have to concentrate on looking after our roads so that people can look after themselves either way. For instance, we'll look at Nabwalia. As soon as government finishes the Mpika-Nabwalia road, people will be able to come to Mpika, the Boma, and get their own food instead of relying on government to airlift food to them.
Which ones are the worst hit areas?
The worst hit areas are mostly in the western, southern, northwestern provinces. They have a history of food relief distribution because of the weather patterns and the accessibility to food. Then we also have isolated cases where there is human-animal conflict, for instance in Muchinga. Parts of Luapula is also affected by flooding. The crops are destroyed because of probably the lakes or the river banks bursting their banks and getting into the crops. And what we have done in the past is that through the in-depth assessment report, we are able to warn our people and advise them to diversify and look at other crops that they can grow which are less resilient to destruction during floods. There are not many, I must say, but rice is one of them that does well in water. We're trying to encourage crop diversification.
When you speak about relief and districts that some of them are perennial receivers of relief food, do we see a situation where they've become dependent on government?
They have, definitely. And
is there something that can be done?
We are trying to see, well, from my perspective, the best solution and permanent solution is to relocate the people. Take them to where they will not be in a floodplain, you know. But even the way they live, they know that the floods will come, so their houses are temporary in nature, but they still go back. Why? Because that's probably the way they will find a source of livelihood, fishing. So with the coming of aquarian, what is it called, aquaculture, we would like people to be relocated, go into higher ground, dry ground, and then get into doing fish ponds, because if their livelihood is fishing, they can easily do that in a modern way rather than depending on the natural waters that we have. So it's something that we are talking with Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Livestock and Fisheries to see how we can get our people to adopt that.
You mentioned Rapula, and naturally Rapula, speaking from historically, they haven't really been a province that depends on relief food.
No. Rapula is a province of fishermen predominantly, and they have a lot of large water bodies. But the fish has been depleted because there's just been fishing. Sometimes they don't even observe the fish ban. So as a result, over the years, we have less and less fish in the lakes and the rivers. Again, I'm going back to the issue of aquaculture. If only we could get people to adopt this. Perhaps it's the setup that's proving to be a little challenging for the people, because they need to spend money on digging the ponds and setting up the ponds. But if we want this to be a success story in this country, we have to give it the political will and attention to help the people who need it because they have the interest in that sector.
I'll take you back onto cholera. You did mention about synergies and collaborations with the Ministry of Health. I want you to speak to your collaborations with local government. They play a big role in the whole situation. Yes,
in terms of local government, it's basically to observe hygiene. We need a lot of public toilets that are well serviced with clean, safe water. We are dealing with markets, bars, schools, and all public places where people are coming from all sorts of areas or backgrounds. And together with the Ministry of Health, they have a department of public health officers that check to see the status of these toilets, particularly food handlers in restaurants, public restaurants and hotels. How clean are their kitchens? Are they meant for cooking a lot of food to reach many people? Are the people qualified? They have to be a basic qualification system for you to handle certain things like cooking for food. So it's both Ministry of Health and local government. And then you have SIs that are still in force, where people have been warned not to throw rubbish anyhow. Again, we need to look at the aspect of public bins. Even where we do have the public bins, are they being emptied, you know, regularly, so that there is no overflow of wastage? Then we have to come to the issue of waste disposal. I'm sure recently you heard that the Ministry of Local Government has embarked on setting up a company that would specifically deal with waste disposal. So in not too distant a future, you should see an improvement in the handling of waste.
Let's look at how quickly you do respond to disasters. Maybe I should ask that as a question, because we've seen you respond with lightning speed to some disasters, maybe schools which have their roofs blown off. But we've seen some schools take 2-3 years before you can move in to help and return their lives to normalcy.
The biggest issue on there is the frequency of the funding to deal with, you know, that specific area. As at now, we've just been updating our database so that when we have the total of, say, 95 million kwacha, which is required for us to do all the roofs, the blown-off roofs for schools, as at now, the construction of the schools, we keep insisting that when contracts are given out to people to build schools, they need to use the correct type of building material with the specific standards. What we have found is that people are using the wrong type of roofing sheet, which is not the right thickness and prone to being lifted by heavy winds. So if we respond in a way of replacing those roofing sheets every time a roof is blown off, people will become highly dependent on government. So what we would like is for the people who are actually doing the building to become responsible. There must be a period of warranty to say this roof will be intact for so long. We have buildings that were built in the 1960s, 40s that are still standing. And then you have recent buildings that within no time, one heavy wind and the roof is blown off. So we would like the contractors to take responsibility for the materials that they use. Secondly, we have community development projects, sometimes using CDF, where the community is expected to do about 25%. Again, the community needs to be supervised properly so that in their preparation of the building materials, they get the correct things. So it's a collaboration issue where the supervision from the professionals, the engineers, is closely monitored. For you to achieve your... And
yes. I get an impression you are most of the time maybe let down by contractors.
In a number of cases, yes.
Roads, in terms of schools?
In a number of cases, yes. I think what people must realize is that DMMU is the end unit that responds to something that has been neglected over a long period of time. For instance, a building, you may see cracks developing. It's not DMMU's job to go and fix that crack. It's the people who are using the building to carry out their regular maintenance to ensure that the crack is attended to there and then. But we seem to neglect simple things until they, upscale to disastrous levels. So what we as DMMU would like to do is to educate or impart knowledge on how best people can avoid. So we'll talk about disaster preparedness, disaster risk reduction, and all sorts of things where we need to invest in avoiding disasters. If we do not invest in avoiding disasters, it will become more expensive to deal with a disaster when it occurs.
Manage disasters. Yes. Are you talking with your other ministries? And because all these things sit in various ministries, and there seems to be a lapse in terms of managing and monitoring.
Yes, this is why I was saying that the Office of the Vice President plays a mediatory role. It coordinates all the key stakeholders. The office itself has no direct responsibility, for instance, in schools. That is under the Ministry of General Education, Ministry of Higher Education. But if a disaster occurs, DMMU will come in to coordinate who needs to do what to help.
I was going to ask you this question. You are inundated, bombarded with all these requests for repair of various infrastructure, yes. Health centers, yes. Schools. Where are the parent ministries?
The parent ministries, in fact,
waiting upon you to
not necessarily, no, but there's a common belief now that DMMU fixes problems faster than parent ministries, only because we're using a whip to say, come together, you do your part, you do your part. Where are we? Is this done? Is this not done? And in the end, something happens. Whereas if it's the parent ministry, they may have challenges in marshalling the other sectors who need to come and be involved. We have the Ministry of Works and Supply. That ministry is supposed to look after all public infrastructure in terms of regular maintenance. We have the Infrastructure Ministry, which until recently is more into new structures and building new airports, new schools, new hospitals, whatever. But even if they're building new hospitals, they still have to collaborate with the Ministry of Health in terms of what is the design for a good hospital. You don't just build anything. You have to know where the kitchen will be, where the theater will be, etc. So it's never a one ministry issue. It's always an issue of other ministries coming together. So DMMU will come in to say, was this done, was this done? If it wasn't done, how then do we build back better? You know, we've come into that phrase where if it's to do with infrastructure, we build back better to reduce the incidence of a disaster happening. For instance, with the markets, you heard that there was a team that the president put in place, headed by Her Honor the Vice President, and we are saying that the markets don't have an effective system of fighting fires. So we have to look at putting buildings that can detect smoke and offset the sprinklers, water sprinklers. So those are the designs that we want to be put in all public institutions, or all public properties, all public buildings, so that even if it's a school, if there's a fire, it's being taken care of initially from design stage.
The fact that you have this backlog and huge cases of schools that you have to build back to normal, institutions that you have to rehabilitate back to normal, it still goes to the point that you're being reactive and not preventive.
Well, that's
we should have done more in ensuring that schools are built better, health centers are built better, institutions, like you're saying, have warning systems about fires.
Yes.
And all that we don't have, and there's a huge burden on disaster management.
Our job now is to look at the various stakeholders that need to come in to help correct the situation. We have the Engineers Association of Zambia, we have the National Construction Commission, I'm not sure what it is. Council, yes. We have the ministries, the parent ministries. We have the technical staff who are charged with the building inspectors, so to speak. So mainly our role is to make sure that everybody who is in the loop is doing their part.
I get a feeling you're not pushing them hard enough.
It may be so, but we are trying. We are trying.
So you're ending up doing the work of Ministry of Education, Ministry of Health?
Not necessarily. We are there to complement.
Ministry of Local Government?
We are there to complement their efforts.
Well, they will allow unsanitary situations and allow vendors back on the street. We have cholera, you have to move in.
We'll move in as a block because it's necessary for us to move in, and only when the parent ministry is unable to manage the incidents on its own, it needs help. That's when we come in. Eventually,
don't you risk becoming an ordinary ministry and not that of emergencies and disasters?
No, we have a very, very specific terms of reference. We have our own work that we do. But in addition to that, we have this coordinating role under DMMU.
Let's add the schools and hospitals and everything. Let's add the boats to that. And I know you also have a huge request for boats.
Yes, we do.
Where is the Ministry of Transport? Isn't that supposed to be budgeted for, and then the line ministry and funded and procured?
Yeah, like I said earlier, people will come to ask DMMU for boats. For instance, only when a bridge has been washed away, then they'll feel the need that DMMU has to come in and respond to this quicker than how Ministry of Transport would normally respond. But these are things that can also be acquired through the CDF, Constituency Development Funds. It's all about the community. What are their needs and what do they need to prepare? Because they know that children cross to go to school, people cross to go to the market, they cross to go to the hospital and all that. So again, it's about planning, which should be at district level. And before it escalates to DMMU, it will only come to DMMU when an incident has happened and the district is not able to deal with it at district level.
Are you able to meet the demand for the boats?
I wouldn't say we are, because it's a question of having funding readily available. But what we would like is that at the moment we procure the boats from one company, a Zambian company that manufactures fiber boats, if you like. But what we would like is to encourage the local industry through the timber production of banana boats. Those are useful for transporting passengers, maybe 5, 6 at a time. But we need to maybe grow the industry to making boats that are bigger, just like the ships, if you like, but at a smaller level, to just help people carry their goods and, you know, things like milli-meal. If they're crossing from one point to another, they need to carry milli-meal, they need to carry furniture, they need to carry small things, household requirements. And they can't do that on a banana boat. So I know that the Ministry of Transport is looking at the issue of water transport. So through them, perhaps we can encourage that they look at a Zambian design of a boat that will service the people adequately.
Let's look at decentralization. People have been calling for operations of the DMMU to be decentralized. How much have you achieved in this area?
What we have done so far is we have an establishment where we have listed the number of people that we need in each province, so to speak. At the moment, we have 10 regional coordinators, and they're just on their own. We need to have drivers, we need to have assistants, and we need to have people stationed at district level. We don't have district officers. So we've done a provisional establishment of how we can grow the unit, so to speak. And for now, we are working with other sector ministries that already have officers in the districts. But we have realized that we need our own to play the coordinating role, which is similar to what's happening at national level. So the only thing that is left is to get Treasury Authority. Again, it borders on funding. We cannot employ people and then not be able to pay them. So once we get the Treasury Authority, we will be able to get our people in station. And I think there will be better coordination of some of these issues that come to the fore. The other thing which would help us would be the establishment of the disaster trust fund, where we have our own account. We are not waiting for Treasury to release money as and when disasters happen. Once that trust fund is open, we can do our own fundraising. But you know, partners who want to partner with you want to see how much input you're have
putting in yourself.
Yes.
As a sign of community. You did talk about this in Parliament, I know, some time back.
Yes, we did.
How much work have you done?
The work is just lobbying Treasury or Ministry of Finance to give us the go-ahead. Once that is done, hopefully 2019 we may be able to establish it.
What are the benefits of having this fund?
The benefits
From the way you're operating?
Yeah, the benefits mean that we will always have funds readily available. So we will not be queuing up at finance for them to determine the priorities and then release the funds. If we have the funds on our own, we'll be able to plan that we can do this to avoid even being reactive, as you earlier mentioned. Then we can also be better prepared in terms of partnerships, because once we have that fund, we will be able to show the political will and commitment that the government has towards setting up a contingency fund, if you like. Right now, the Treasury has a contingency which deals with any other issues that have not been laid out in the Yellow Book, and that's where we fall. So when something happens that has not been budgeted for, we turn to the Treasury to release funding from the contingency. Yes.
Do you have, are you funded adequately? Do you get enough funding? Maybe I should ask that.
The simple answer to that is we would like to be better funded. It's more a question of being timely funded. Yes, we do have delays in when funds are available. But for some reason, when a disaster happens, funds are readily available. But we would prefer a situation where we are funded as and when we need to be, so that we are always ready.
What happens when funds are not available?
We make them available.
Have you faced a situation where you don't have funds? You've got a disaster, but there are no funds?
Yes. It's the collaboration I was talking about, because Ministry of Finance is always a partner in this, and they have to come on board. We look at the situation, and funds will definitely be found from the contingency. So the preparation is in place in terms of the mechanism for us to get to the money. It's already in place, but we are looking at the situation of making it better by establishing the disaster trust fund, so that we are not running to Treasury. We are ready in our own right as the DMMU
There have been times when you've asked for funding from the public, and there have been a lot of queries on how you're using the money and accountability issues.
Yes, they've been, I think since my term of office, we've had 2 incidences: the markets, the gutted markets, and the cholera. How we do it is, depending on the nature of the disaster. If it's cholera, clearly it's health related. So we'll let Ministry of Health take the lead. So whatever contributions we have are passed on to the Ministry of Health, who best do the distribution because they know where what should go. And they are the ones who become accountable and are charged with producing a report. If it's armyworms, it's the Ministry of Agriculture who takes the lead because it's under their ministry. The same with markets, it's local government who takes the lead. However, if people are truly interested in knowing how the money has been spent, a public document is always an option which can be made available for people to inspect. But we try to give regular updates to say this market is at so much percentage complete, what's remaining is this and that, and we'll give a budget of how much money is required for us to complete the project. So even as the donations come in, they are not adequate to complete the activity. We still need to source for more funding.
It looks like to me you need to push for more political will.
Yes.
Because
yes.
I mean we seem not to have standards on how to build our homes, how to build markets, how to build schools.
The standards,
everyone can do anything.
No, the standards are there.
And we've let it be like that, and then the toll, like I said, the burden is on your office.
The standards are there, the laws are there. It's a question of enforcement. For some reason,
why are we failing to enforce? Countries like Rwanda do it very easily. And
you have democracy. In this country, democracy means you can do whatever you like. It has definitely been misunderstood. Definitely not. We are a country of laws, and all we need, like I said, is just enforcement. But people tend to have the laissez-faire attitude where they don't really care. We cry for jobs, and then once we get the jobs, we become complacent and we don't do the work to the best of our abilities.
Does the blame move to you as politicians for failing to enforce, lacking political will?
I wouldn't say that we lack political will. I think in terms of pronouncements, politicians make it very clear that this is what we would like.
But then you don't have enough energy to drive your will and the pronouncement.
Well, in driving our energy, casualties will come. Again, when casualties come, it becomes another issue on the floor of the House. We are targeting people, we are firing people, we are not addressing the question of unemployment. I think everybody has to take personal responsibility. For instance, you, Gravajo, you know you're a journalist. Your job is to bring information to the public or whatever it is that you do. But if you embark on a private agenda where you couldn't care less, you don't want to help the strategic plan come to fruition, and you frustrate the process, if disciplinary measures are taken upon you, can you blame the disciplinarians? Because people will come to your aid and say, the government has done this to this person. So we're trying to give people enough rope to hang themselves so that when we crack the whip, you know, we will have given them enough chances for them to do their work.
You're being soft?
I don't think so, not anymore. Probably previously.
I mean, government shouldn't be weak in terms of enforcing laws and standards.
We shouldn't be weak.
Because it's costing the nation at the end of it all. The nation has to fork out money to pay for the schools that have their roofs blown off.
Yes, we have to be focused.
Some contractor somewhere decided they were not going to buy standard roofing.
But then again, the cry for contractors, give the work to the Zambian contractors, is coming from the people. So we give them the opportunity, and then if they mess up or they are not able to deliver to expectation, we bring in the Chinese who do a better job, who will work 24/7, who don't believe in holidays, who will deliver a good product as long as you tell them that this is the product I want, and you don't negotiate in such a way that you know, some of the quality is taken away. If the Zambians truly want the country to develop, they have to be fully involved, and they have to be fully committed to bring out the best that they can do for their own country. We as politicians are trying that, and our job is to talk. which we do, I think, very effectively. But are people listening to us? That's the question.
Maybe you need to find another route, and if people are not listening. I want to take you back and maybe look at relief and distribution of food. What criteria do you use? We've heard some complaints in some cases that there's been unfair distribution of relief food.
Well, probably because, again, it's a Zambian thing. If my neighbor has relief food, I must also have, even if I don't qualify to receive that relief food, because what determines who receives relief is the surrounding, the area in which they are. Food security, are they able to do it at a subsistence level? If they are not, then they'll qualify. What kind of household is it? Is it child-led household, child-headed? Is it female-headed? Is it people with different abilities who cannot go into the field and fend for themselves? There are different criteria that you use to identify who qualifies. Most commonly is the flooding. You know, it's a general kind of incidence that has occurred, and it affects so many households, whether they're able-bodied or not. And one of the interventions is to relocate the people. So the whole community or affected community is looked at holistically rather than individually. So the criteria is quite well set out, and that is what is followed.
There should be complaints. When you look back down in history, as we move away from disaster management, what would you pick out as major disasters that the country has faced?
The major disasters, I think it's the road traffic accident, which happened a while ago. I do have some statistics where I can go through the total number of people who died, and the fires, the areas of intervention of what. I'll go with the natural disasters of 1978-2013, where in total about 5,158,258 people were affected. This was due to the mines, people collapsing and, you know, the community not being able to handle the situation. Technological disasters from 2008 to 2015, about 1,051 people were affected. The natural disasters, again, similar to the 1978-2012, where 411 people died. Epidemics also, about 272 people have died. Then you also cost this in terms of the loss, in terms of money terms, which is about $200,000 US for the Kanyama disasters in 1978. In 1998, there was Northern Province disaster where mostly it was due to flooding, both Kanyama and in Northern Province, and about $20 million US worth of goods were destroyed. So we have the database for this.
Clearly, we need to do more to manage disasters and avoid the cost. Let's move to resettlement. I want you to deal with the issue of resettlement. It was a hot issue, a big issue under counter days, and we saw establishment of the Kanakanta schemes and so on. We don't hear much about them now. Is it a forgotten area?
No, certainly not. In fact, the activity levels went down only because we have not been talking about them. We do have a strategic plan in revamping the resettlement schemes. We have about over 90 schemes dotted all over the country, and a lot of land. The difficulty has been that because we are giving this land to the vulnerable, we have tended to just drop them, you know, on a piece of land without logistical support in terms of access road and infrastructure, schools for the children to go to, health clinics, markets. So going forward, we have put in a strategic plan to revamp the resettlement schemes, meaning that whatever the Ministry of Infrastructure is doing, if they're looking at construction of schools in collaboration with the Ministry of General Education, the resettlement schemes have to be part of that plan. True, because it was not an item in each ministry, but specifically put under OVP, which OVP had to budget for on its own. It proved difficult. It's like you're duplicating efforts. So now what we are saying is that under the multi-sectoral approach, if there is activities in livestock and fisheries, because we are dealing with land issues, the resettlement schemes must be a part of that. And we are not just looking at the vulnerable, we are looking at people who are unemployed and people who will retire in the near future. We're trying to encourage them to set themselves up. So recently we went to visit one of the commercial farm blocks in Lufanyama, and we saw an Israeli model of about two hectares piece of land, where you have a house, you have a greenhouse to service the anchor farmer, and plenty of land for you to do your own thing. So we want to borrow that model and do that with our resettlement scheme so that there's more activity. But first we need to engage the Defense Forces, National Service, to help us deal with the access roads. We need the Ministry of Water to help us with the sinking of boreholes, doing water networks. We need to engage the Ministry of Education to ensure that we have enough schools built up, or at least part of the plan. In terms of looking for resources, we can try to do that as a unit. But we have the model, it's ready. All it needs is capital injection and working together. And
then work starts. And which ones are you targeting first? Which ones are your priority?
We would like to establish one in each of the provinces. So initially we're going to do 10. In Eastern Province we have Kohima. In Muchinga Province we have Mufubushi, then Kanchibia. I can't remember all of them by name, but we've sort of identified which resettlement scheme has a lot of people who can churn out the kind of production levels that we are looking to. Some of them, the land is like 70% occupied, some 60%, some even 90%, like Kanakantapa is the success story.
You don't even need to move in there, so it's self-sustaining.
Yes, but that's the kind of success we would like to see in all the resettlement schemes. It also depends on who goes there. If the people who go there who have the ability to become the anchor farmers, the investors, if you like, the farm blocks are not so different from the resettlement schemes because they're both involved in agriculture activities. The only difference is that in the farm blocks, people are commercially viable. They're looking at large-scale production, and a lot of money goes into that, whereas the resettlement schemes, it's government, you know, looking at investing in there. So we are trying to make people see agriculture as an alternative, just like the President has been saying. His Excellency President Lungu has been encouraging all of us to get involved in crop diversification, planting something, going into aquaculture business. So we feel that the resettlement schemes are a perfect starting point for anybody who has interest to do land activities.
Going to agriculture.
Yeah.
Finally, as we close, one last question. You also run the honors and awards.
Yes,
and you there's an impression you select the people that the President honors during independence, and maybe tell us the criteria.
The criteria is that we invite members of the public to put in recommendations. So they will write to the Permanent Secretary of Administration, OVP, and then there's a committee of different permanent secretaries who sit together to look at the recommendations that they have received and see which ones are worthy. So you as an individual can even put in a recommendation. For instance, if you're a fan of football and you want to recommend one of the footballers, you are very free to do that. Associations can do that. Ministries, the ministerial departments can also do that. Members of the public, law associations.
Do people know that?
Well, I'm hoping that through interaction like this, we can take out the information. But normally there's an advert which invites people to put in their recommendations. But possibly we could strengthen that by doing radio interviews and telling them that the exercise has started. It's an ongoing, it has no, you know, open or closed end. But the sitting is specific, and for each year we try to prepare for the honors and awards during the Africa Freedom Day, Independence Day, the public holidays, Labor Day, things like that.
Minister, it's been a pleasure having you on the program.
Thank you very much.
You've been watching Sunday Interview, and this week our guest was the Minister in the Office of the Vice President, Sylvia Chalikosa. I'll be back next week sometime. Pleasant viewing.